Hello and welcome to Nancy Drew Ghost Dogs of Moon Lake, where we are going to do some reading. First thing, we'll start with the health and safety tips. Well water. Moon Lake is too far from any major city for its residents to tap into a public water supply. Therefore, everyone living in the area must rely on private wells for the water they use every day for drinking, cooking, and bathing. Nowadays, wells are located and constructed according to requirements set down by the state of Pennsylvania. But a well does not last forever. Sooner or later, wells begin to lose their ability to keep out contaminants. For this reason, a well should be inspected every few years, and its water should be tested at least once a year. Water can be contaminated by chemicals such as pesticides and fertilizers, by naturally occurring elements such as arsenic and lead, and by waste-borne microbes, which can cause such diseases as dysentery, hepatitis, giardiasis. See factoid on giardiasis under health and safety tips. And cryptosporidiosis. Well water that is contaminated may look and smell fine, which is why testing is imperative to ensure safety. On the other hand, well water that smells and tastes like rotten eggs may be perfectly safe. This unpleasant odor may come from the underground rock surrounding the source of the well water, but more likely it is caused by bacteria which, though harmless, live in rapidly multiplying colonies in the well and emit hydrogen sulfide gas as part of their life cycle. Disinfecting the well with carefully calculated amounts of chlorine can reduce or eliminate foul odors by destroying the bacteria which create them. The Grimley County Extension Service has more information on shock chlorination. If your well is more than 20 years old, has not been used or tested for more than a year, or there is a sudden change in the quality of your water, immediately stop drinking the water and disconnect your plumbing system from the well. Then get a water testing kit from the friendly, ever helpful park ranger behind you. Take a sample from the well. See the factoid on priming a pump if your pump doesn't work, and send it to the address included in the kit. When working with water systems large or small, always remember, turning a valve to the right will shut off the flow of water, while turning a valve to the left will allow water to flow. In other words, righty-tighty, lefty-loosey. Yeah, I've heard that one before. Priming a pump. Shallow well pumps, which can lift water a maximum of 25 feet at sea level, operate on the same principle as a drinking straw. The action of the pump sucks air out of the intake or drop, a pipe that extends down into the well water, and when a partial vacuum is created, air pressure does the rest, pushing the water up the intake pipe and out the spout of the pump. When a pump seems to stop working, that is, when it fails to suck any water up and out the spout no matter how much the handle is pumped, it probably needs to be primed. To prime a pump, simply pour potable that is drinkable, water into the top of it and pump the handle until water flows from the spout. It's a good idea to fill a container with water right away and keep it nearby so you'll have water the next time the pump needs priming. A pump needs to be primed because built into the pump is a cylinder through which runs a plunger. One end of the plunger is attached to the pump handle. The other end is attached to a valve which opens when the handle is raised and closes when the handle is pushed down. The sides of the valve, its leathers, must be wet in order to create enough of a seal with the edge of the cylinder to pull the air out of the intake pipe and allow air pressure to force water up the pipe, into the cylinder and out the spout. The longer the pump goes without being used, the drier these leathers will become. Of course, in time, these valve or cup leathers will eventually wear out and have to be replaced. Well water should be tested at least once a year to make sure no chemicals or disease-causing microbes have contaminated the water. Right? So that's what we'll need the water bottle for. Hantavirus. Though there are several types of hantaviruses, all of which are transmitted to people by rodents, mice and rats, the type which is of most concern is the one that can cause acute respiratory failure and death. This disease is called hantavirus pulmonary syndrome, or HPS, and the rodent most likely to transmit the disease to humans is the deer mouse. A deer mouse infected with the hantavirus does not act or appear sick. The virus simply lives in its body, always present in its saliva, urine, and droppings. Once outside the mouse's body, the virus can exist for several days, waiting to infect another host. Infection occurs when tiny particles containing the virus are kicked up into the air, a process called aerosolization, and inhaled. The early symptoms of HPS can occur anywhere from 1 to 5 weeks after exposure to particles contaminated with the virus. Early symptoms always include fatigue, fever, and muscle aches, may include headaches, chills, and abdominal problems, but almost never include earache, sore throat, and rash. 4 to 10 days after the early symptoms appear, the victim experiences coughing and severe shortness of breath as the lungs gradually fill with fluid. To avoid contracting HPS, people should always assume that any mouse-infested area has been contaminated with hantavirus and should either avoid these areas or take precautions when cleaning them. Never sweep an area that mice have inhabited, as sweeping would stir up dust which could then be inhaled. Instead, wearing a respiratory mask and rubber gloves, remove dirt from the area with a damp towel, mop, or sponge. Double bag the cleaning materials before disposing of them. Oh, so is that what the rubber gloves and the thing that we found are for? You know, this stuff. Okay. Lyme disease. Lyme disease named after Lyme, Connecticut, where a cluster of arthritis cases in 1977 led to the identification of the disease, is an infection caused by a bacterium carried by deer ticks. The disease occurs mostly in the northeastern, mid-Atlantic, and upper north-central United States, which includes Pennsylvania. Each year, more than 16,000 people are infected in the US. The spring and summer months, May through November, pose the greatest risk of infection. Deer ticks flourish in wooded, brushy or grassy areas where the animals on which they feed, rodents, deer and birds, are abundant. Much smaller than common dog and cattle ticks, deer ticks feed by inserting their mouths into the skin of the host animal and ingesting blood. This is a very slow process, which means that if a feeding deer tick is spotted and removed early enough, infection can be avoided. The early symptoms of Lyme disease include fever, fatigue, chills, headache, and muscle and joint aches. Most victims will also develop a distinctive rash that resembles a bullseye. Once the bacteria have spread from the site of the tick bite, the infection can cause neurological abnormalities, arthritis, and even heart problems. Though rarely fatal, Lyme disease can cause its victims months, even years, of suffering. The sooner the disease is diagnosed, the sooner antibiotics can be administered, and the more likely the victim is to fully recover. But prevention is always best policy, so whenever you're out enjoying the woods around Moon Lake, wear light-colored clothing so you can see the ticks and knock them away before they can attach to your skin. Always wear a long-sleeved shirt and tuck the bottoms of your pants into your socks or boots. Inspect your skin carefully after every outing, and if you find any ticks, remove them by grasping them with a pair of tweezers, then pulling with a firm, steady motion, and washing the area with antiseptic. See your doctor immediately if you develop any symptoms of Lyme disease. Giardiasis. Giardiasis. Oh, giardiasis. Whatever. Or the beaver fever is an illness caused by a parasite that lives in the intestines of people and animals. This one-celled microbe is protected by a hard outer shell and can survive outside its host for a long time, which is a major reason that this disease is one of the most common waterborne diseases in the United States. When these hard-shelled cysts are expelled into the environment in the waste matter of infected animals or humans, they stay in the soil until they contaminate a food source and are accidentally ingested, or until they are carried into streams, rivers, lakes, or recreational bodies of water such as pools and hot tubs. Swimmers or campers who swallow water that contains even a few cysts can develop this disease. Because beavers tend to live near outdoor water sources, their fecal matter was blamed for spreading the disease when it first gained notoriety, hence the name beaver fever. But any mammal, including people and their pets, can harbor the parasite and spread the disease. Symptoms usually occur 1 or 2 weeks after the parasite is ingested and include diarrhea, abdominal cramps, and stomach upset. In healthy people, these symptoms will usually disappear on their own after about a month. People whose immune systems are compromised should be treated with anti-parasitic drugs, or the illness could become chronic. This illness is very contagious, but because the cysts must be swallowed in order for the parasite to invade the intestine, washing hands thoroughly with soap and water before eating or handling food and after using the toilet will go a long way in preventing infection. People suffering from the disease or its symptoms should avoid pools and hot tubs until they have been symptom-free for at least 2 weeks. Never drink untreated water from streams or lakes when hiking or camping, and always wash and/or peel raw fruits and vegetables that may have come in contact with contaminated soil or water. If you must use water that you suspect contains Giardia, heat the water to a rolling boil for at least 1 minute, or filter it using a filter that has been NSF rated for cyst removal. Forest fire prevention. It's up to the people using our nation's parks and forest lands to prevent forest fires. While some fires are started by lightning, the most devastating fires tend to be started by human carelessness. People who smoke should refrain from doing so when enjoying Moon Lake State Park. Fireworks and firearms of any kind are strictly prohibited, except when the danger of fire is extremely high. Check with your friendly park ranger. Campfires are allowed in the park, but only in designated areas. The easiest way to prevent forest fires is to use common sense. Never start a campfire unless you have a supply of water or sand readily available to put it out. Never leave a campfire unattended, and when you put a fire out, do not leave the area until the ashes are cool to the touch. A steady breeze can fan hot embers into flames, so be particularly careful on windy days. The spark from an engine, or even the heat of an exhaust pipe can be enough to ignite dry grass, so all motorized vehicles must stay on the road while within park boundaries and must be parked only in designated parking areas. Off-road driving of any kind of motorized vehicle is strictly prohibited at all times. Most of the trees in Moon Lake State Park range in age from 70 to 100 years old. Don't let 1 minute of carelessness destroy what it took nature decades to create. Treat the woods as if it were your home. To thousands and thousands of plants and animals, that's exactly what it is. And finally, poisonous plants. 3 varieties of plants growing in Moon Lake State Park have the potential to make life miserable for 85% of its visitors: poison ivy, poison oak and poison sumac all produce an oil called urushiol, which, when it comes in contact with a person's skin, can cause allergic dermatitis. This skin rash, characterized by redness, swelling, blisters, and itching, can vary from mild to quite severe, depending on a person's sensitivity, which tends to decline with age. Poison ivy and poison oak are characterized by leaves comprised of 3 leaflets. Just remember, leaflets of 3, let it be. Here at Moon Lake, poison ivy grows as a vine in wooded areas, while poison oak grows as a low shrub. Poison sumac has leaves comprised of 7 to 13 leaflets and tends to grow as a tall shrub or low tree in boggy areas of the park. All 3 plants lose their leaves in winter. People commonly come in contact with the urushiol in the sap of these plants in 3 ways: by touching their roots, stems, or leaves, by touching something else that has come in contact with urushiol, like an animal, a ball, or garden tool, and by allowing airborne urushiol particles released when poisonous plants are burned to reach their skin. A rash will usually form within 12 to 48 hours following contact with urushiol. Although the rash can appear to spread from one part of the body to the other, in truth, it does not. It simply takes longer for the rash to appear on some parts of the body than on others, depending on the thickness of the skin. Prevention is always the best cure. Over-the-counter barrier creams that keep urushiol from penetrating the skin can offer some protection, but it's best to simply learn what poisonous plants look like and avoid them. Don't play sports near them, and keep pets away from them as well. Alright, let's look at the slideshow. White-tailed deer, peregrine falcon, wood ducks, red squirrel, Moon Lake during fall, another spectacular Moon Lake sunset, Moon Lake glowworm. That was that. History of Moon Lake. Lenape tribe. The first residents of Moon Lake were members of the Lenape tribe, one of several Algonquin-speaking tribes that populated the northeastern US for hundreds, if not thousands of years prior to the arrival of settlers from Europe. Because the early colonists had trouble pronouncing Lenape, they lumped the tribe in with all the other Algonquin-speaking tribes that they encountered and referred to this larger group as the Delaware Indians. This is because many of the Algonquin-speaking tribes lived in the large drainage basin of the Delaware River, which had been named after an Englishman whose title was Lord Delaware. Curious and friendly, the Lenape were hospitable to the early colonists. But as the number of settlers grew, so did the tension between the two groups. The Lenape believed that all land belonged to the Creator, and as a result, they had difficulty understanding the concept of private ownership by which the Europeans seemed to live. The Lenape gradually migrated west, settling for brief periods in Ohio, Indiana, Illinois, Missouri, Arkansas, and Kansas. At each place, the Lenape were told that that was to be their new home. But after a few years, the Europeans would change their minds and force them to move again. They finally settled in Oklahoma, where more than 11,000 Lenape still live today. Early settlers. Native Americans were the first true settlers. Around 1635, immigrants from Europe moved into the area. Most of the German and Scotch-Irish descent, mostly of German and Scotch-Irish descent, they farmed the fields around the lake, hunted game in the woods, and lived peacefully alongside the Lenape. But as more and more settlers came, the demand for land increased, and so did the pressure on the Lenape to move out. In one instance, the Europeans talked the Lenape into turning over to them as much land as a man could walk in a day and a half. The Lenape agreed to the deal, and the settlers promptly sent men out to run as far as they could in the allotted time. The walking purchase, as it is called today, forced many Lenape to leave Moon Lake forever. Like the rest of Pennsylvania, Moon Lake was very anti-slavery. Prior to the Civil War, the Red's Gay farm on the north side of the lake was rumored to be part of the Underground Railroad, the secret network of people who would hide slaves fleeing from their owners in the south and help them travel to Canada, where they'd be free. Dozens of slaves at a time reportedly sought refuge during the day in the huge cellar of the farmhouse. When night came, they'd resume their perilous journey to the north. Nothing remains of the farm today, though in the 1920s, a gangster, see famous residents, built a house in the approximate spot where the farmhouse once stood. Oh. Okay, so the house we're staying in has a pretty interesting history, or the land, at least. Famous residents. In the early 20th century, many celebrities from the East Coast spent time here, including Florence Ziegfeld, famous producer of Broadway musicals and revues. In fact, in 1926, his boat, the Folly King, ran into the rocks at the north end of the lake and capsized. Nobody was hurt, but rather than going to the bother of repairing the boat, Ziegfeld simply left it there. Legend has it that for years a local dog would swim out to the wreck every day and lie on it, barking at everyone who came near. The boat gradually disintegrated until now no trace of it remains. Local legend has it that Ben Franklin spent the summer of 1744 on Moon Lake's south shore. That summer was a particularly stormy one, which has led to speculation that his interest in lightning and electricity was sparked by his experiences here. Moon Lake has had some infamous residents as well. In 1925, at the height of Prohibition, Mickey Malone, a gangster from Philadelphia who got rich smuggling and distributing illegal liquor, built a house on the North Shore at the site of the old Redsky Farm. Right. People came from up and down the East Coast to attend the parties he threw at Moon Lake. He was convicted of tax evasion in 1933 and sent to prison, where he eventually died. Creation of Moon Lake State Park. Acquisition of land. In the early 1900s, as automobiles began to make the rural parts of the state more accessible to people from the big city, interest in hiking and camping in remote areas such as Moon Lake grew. Interest in saving forested areas instead of allowing them to be destroyed by logging increased as well. In 1919, a group of private citizens, mostly from Philadelphia, formed the Moon Lake Conservancy in order to raise money to acquire and preserve the land surrounding the lake. By 1921, the group had acquired most of the land on its west, south, and east shores, a total of 1,004 acres. The land was donated to the State Forestry Department and formally became Moon Lake State Park in 1930. Although the Moon Lake Conservancy no longer exists, many people still dream of the day when they can walk all the way around Moon Lake without encountering private property. If you own land on Moon Lake, or know someone who does, please consider selling, or better yet donating it, to the Pennsylvania Department of Conservation and Natural Resources. Ask your friendly park ranger for more information. Construction of facilities. The Information Center at Moon Lake and its adjacent sanitation facility were built in 1939 by the Civilian Conservation Corps. Yeah, we already read about that. The CCC etched the year into the cornerstone of the building using an ancient numbering system called Roman numerals. All of the hiking trails in the park, except for the Mingo Saddle Trail, were created by the original inhabitants of the Moon Lake area, the Lenape. The CCC incorporated these trails into the park by widening and marking them in the late 1930s. The Bureau of State Parks surveyed, cleared, and blazed the Mingo Saddle Trail in 1969 in order to link Moon Lake State Park to the Appalachian Trail via Delaware Ridge. Roman numerals. You probably noticed the letters etched into the right-hand cornerstone on the front of this building. This is not the name of the building, rather, it is the date its construction was completed. 1939. The letters are Roman numerals, a numbering system invented by the Romans some 3,000 years ago. And then here's the system. So many people probably know 1, 5, and 10, but L is 50, C is 100, D is 500, and M is 1000. Okay? So L and D were ones that were kind of new to me. 50 and 500. Oh, I bet there was more, wasn't there? Let's see. Yeah, there was. Oops. In Roman numerals, the number 3 is expressed as 3 eyes. Yeah. The Romans made one slightly tricky adjustment when it came to writing 4s and 9s. In Roman numerals, any time a letter representing a smaller number is placed in front of, to the left of, a letter representing a larger number, the smaller number is subtracted from the larger number. For instance, instead of writing 4 as 4 eyes, the Romans would write IV. Yeah. Interestingly, the numbering system the Romans developed, unlike the Arabic system which we use, had no symbol for 0. Oh, and one more thing. You may have noticed the 3 C's etched into the stone below the Roman numerals. This does not represent the number 300. Rather, the letters stand for the men that built the station, the Civilian Conservation Corps. And finally, about Jeff Akers. Park Ranger Jeff Akers was born and raised in Tyrone, Pennsylvania. Upon graduation from Norris High School in 1989, he attended Penn State, where he earned a bachelor's degree in park and recreation management. He has been the park ranger at Moon Lake State Park since 1996. Because he spent much of his childhood at Moon Lake, he's excited about introducing visitors to what he calls the best state park in the country. From geology to astronomy to meteorology, Ranger Akers knows his stuff. So if you have any questions, just ask. He's here to serve. And then we have park regulations. Boating. The use of motors in excess of 18 horsepower is prohibited. All persons on board any type of boat or kayak shall wear a Coast Guard approved personal flotation device at all times. The mooring of boats to any dock, wharf, pier, shop, or boat launch in a manner that interferes with public use or creates a hazard to swimmers or other watercraft is prohibited. Sailboats greater than 14 feet in length and multi-hull sailboats are prohibited. Inflatable boats must be greater than 7 feet in length, made of tough reinforced fabric, and have at least 2 separate buoyancy chambers exclusive of any inflatable floor or bottom. All boats must display a state park launch permit, which can be obtained from your local park ranger once your boat passes his or her inspection. All watercraft in operation on the lake between dusk and dawn must display running lights. Red light on port bow. Red light on port bow. Green light on starboard bow. Okay, so lights on if you go boating in the dark. Swimming. There are no designated swimming areas at Moon Lake. This means that while swimming is not prohibited, visitors will have to rely on their own judgment when it comes to where and when to swim. Inflatable rafts and flotation devices may be used, but bear in mind that when it's windy, such devices and their passengers may easily wind up being blown on to the southeastern shore of the lake. Also, no emergency vessels are available to perform water rescues. The bottom line is, enjoy Moon Lake, but do so at your own risk. Hiking. Some of the most interesting day hikers in the state are found at Moon Lake State Park. Some of the most interesting day hikes. I mean, sure, probably sometimes you can find interesting day hikers as well. But yeah, some of the most interesting day hikes in the state are found at Moon Lake State Park. All trails begin on the north side of the information center and are well marked with signs and blazes painted on trees. The Half a Lake Loop is a moderate to easy 7.3 mile loop that allows hikers to walk from the east side of the lake to the southwest side and back again without retracing their steps. The northernmost section of the hike is rocky and challenging, but the spectacular views of Moon Lake to the south and Grimley Gulch to the north make the effort worthwhile. The Mary Berry Bog Trail is a flat 3.3 miles out and back hike that winds through a wetland where blueberries once flourished. Hikers are advised to wear waterproof shoes. The blueberry patch can and will rejuvenate itself if hikers stay on the trail and refrain from picking. Poison sumac can also be found in the bog, another reason to stay on the trail. The Lenape Creek Trail follows a creek through a rugged but beautiful canyon where Native Americans used to hunt and fish. Although time and tourists have destroyed almost all traces of their presence, some hikers have reported finding arrowheads along the trail. This moderately difficult hike is 5.4 miles out and back. The Mingo Saddle Trail, which is 4.1 miles one way, connects Moon Lake with the 19-mile-long Delaware Ridge Trail, which in turn links up with the great 2,000-mile-long Appalachian Trail. Because it is infrequently used, creatures of both field and forest abound all along the trail. The 10 essentials of hiking: extra water, extra food, extra clothing, matches, compass, map, first aid kit, hat, sunscreen, and common sense. Yeah, that last one being especially important, I bet. Leash laws. While in Moon Lake State Park, except when being transported by boat or car, dogs must be kept on a leash at all times. There are no exceptions. In no area of the park are dogs allowed to run loose. A dog leash may not exceed 6 feet in length. Mechanically retractable leashes of any length are acceptable. Dog owners or handlers may have a maximum of 2 dogs under their supervision at one time. Owners must clean up after their dogs immediately and dispose of all waste materials in a safe and appropriate manner. Dogs whose behavior has a negative impact on other dogs, wildlife, vegetation, or people will not be tolerated. If you cannot control your dog, leave it home. Fishing. Moon Lake offers excellent warm water fishing. Yellow perch, black crappies, bluegills, and smallmouth bass await the eager and properly licensed angler. To fish at Moon Lake, a person must be at least 16 years old. He or she must obtain a current license from a license issuing agent, like the friendly park ranger, sign it in ink, and display it on an outer garment. Also, a person should carry positive proof of identification while fishing and be prepared to furnish it when asked. It is against the law to use more than 2 rods and/or lines when fishing, and no more than 3 hooks may be affixed to any line. A hook with 2 or 3 points is considered one hook. Using nets or snagging hooks to catch fish is strictly prohibited. Also, the disposing of trash in the water or on the adjacent land is illegal. All persons on board any type of boat or kayak must wear a Coast Guard approved personal flotation device at all times. Show courtesy to other anglers and exercise safety at all times. Learning how to swim only makes sense if you're going to be spending time on, in, or near the water. Okay, that was a lot of reading.
I probably shouldn't mess around with this without Ranger Acres' permission.
Okay. Right. Well, that was such a lot of reading that, well, I think we might actually end the episode here and explore further in the next episode. Maybe ask permission to look into here, and then let's see. We did already look at that stuff, so we'll ask permission to look into there and then see if there's anything else in here for us to look at before we leave. So, thank you so much for watching this video. Nothing much happened, but we did learn some interesting things. And in the next episode, we will hopefully make some things happen and progress a little in the game. If you like this video, please leave it a like. I would really love that. And also, please remember to be kind to yourself. Have a lovely rest of your day, and I will see you again next time.